Hello, all you hardcores out there. How you doing? Guess who's back? It's Julian from Dewsbury. How you doing, Julian?
I'm good, Russell. I'm good, mate. Friday, the weekend's here. Looking forward to the weekend.
Did you see the weigh-in?
I did. Really interesting watching it, hearing the conflicting views and things. Um, I thought both fighters looked really well, actually. I know there was a few, Matthew Macklin was saying that he thought he looked really dry and he looked quite tired, did Brook, and I didn't get that sense. Like I say, I've seen fighters look better at the weigh-in, but I've seen fighters look a lot worse and a lot, deader on the scales. I thought Khan had a really healthy glow to his skin. He had that bit of a shine, so which tells me that he still has some hydration levels in his body. And Brook looks a little bit older in the face. Obviously, another fight at welterweight or just above welterweight is going to add some years onto him. But I didn't think Brook looked too bad. Sorry about that. I didn't think he looked too bad. I thought it looked okay. 1 second.
Julian's dog letting ripping shit up.
Apologies, the dog once again. There's actually nobody walking past the house, but yeah, I thought both looked well. But yeah, Khan did look good. He had a good energy about him, and it was intriguing. I think it's a. We all know it's too late. People say, "Oh, it's 5 years too late, 10 years too late." It's like, tell us something that we don't know. But I think it'd be a good fight.
Yeah, what do you think to the old weight situation? Because weren't we told when he fought Golovkin that 147 was too dangerous for him? And now here we are, well, 6 or 7 years later, and Kell Brooks he's still weighing 1 pound more than welterweight. So where does that all go into perspective for you, Julian?
I've got mixed views about the whole thing, which won't surprise you. So obviously fighters, as they get older, they get a little bit more denser. We all do. All our bones get a little bit more denser as we hit our late 20s to late 30s. That's like a evolution thing. So it does get harder for fighters to make their weigh-in, but it's also quite convenient when people get beat. We've seen it recently, haven't we, with Terry Harper and Galahad, and people get beat, and all of a sudden they're dead at the weight. Oh, she's huge at the weight. She's huge at the weight. So I think sometimes it's exaggerated how people struggle to make the weight. But I do agree that, like Brook fighting at the heavyweights and fighting Golovkin, it's harder to drag yourself back down. But ultimately, it's like if I said to you, Russell, I need you to get down to 10 stone and I'm going to give you $5,000, you're going to go like that. If I say I need you to get down to 9.5 stone and I'm going to give you $100,000, you're going to do it, aren't you? You're going to do whatever you need to do to get to that weight.
Yeah, it's a money thing, isn't it? You're going to talk to yourself. Nobody sees what goes on behind closed doors, do they?
No, they don't. And obviously being around, championship fights and getting fighters ready for championship fights, you see what goes on, and it's quite tough. It's the discipline of making the weight and the discipline of having no cheats, and it's all about the water intake. The last 3 to 4 days is all about the water intake. Some fighters will go to bed fully hydrated the night before, and then they'll just, they'll pass the water during the night and on the morning. Some fighters go to bed dry because that's just what they have to do. We know it's dangerous. It's something that goes on. I'm intrigued to know what the I believe they signed some kind of non-disclosure agreement about, there is a clause about the weight in the ring or the weight on the day. I don't know what that clause is. So that's an interesting one, but Brook clearly wasn't happy with some terms of the contract, but he was desperate for the fight. So he's gone with it. And I don't think they would do anything massively dangerous to make the weight. Listen, if he was getting to the 11 stone mark and he was feeling weak in the gym and he was passing out, they wouldn't do the fight. No fight's worth that risk. I just think it would have been, based on experience, it's very hard to make the weight, but not impossible, clearly.
He'll be eating now, won't he? Getting some spaghetti down him. And
yeah, I think the general rule of thumb, and this is where people make the mistake, but from a safety point of view, what you should do is obviously your organs shrink and all that kind of thing when you're dehydrated. But the general rule of thumb is you don't eat until you pass water. So you get weighed in, they'll be dry, they'll be both be as dry as a bone, you get weighed in, and as soon as you start passing water and your kidneys and everything start functioning again and your digestive system, you start the process of eating and the slow releasing carbs, the fast releasing carbs, etc. And that's the one thing where Domingo will come into his own, because he's done this 1,000 times, and he'll make sure that Brooks fully hydrated and his energy levels are good. Probably by the time he wakes up in the morning, he'll be feeling and looking a completely different fighter.
Yeah. Speaking of Flex, do you feel that Flex has made it about him this week? Because he's had plenty to say every day and in every interview, and he's actually done as many interviews as Brook, and he's not fighting. And there's obviously he stole the day the other day or the week with drinking his sweat. What do you make of all that, Julian? Think it's a bit odd?
I wouldn't. I mean, I know Dom. I've always gone with Dom, and I like Dom. I'll always tell you that. I think it's one of those. Generally, if the fighters haven't got the biggest of personalities and they haven't got the biggest stories to tell, sometimes they focus a little bit more on the coaches. I think I've mentioned this before. It's like Tyson Fury, for example. Tyson Fury, Dillian White. I think you'll hear less about the coaches when they fight, purely because they're such big personalities. It's enough, but I think the broadcasters and the promoters and everybody else does as much as they can to make it theatre for the viewer. And whilst you and I might think it's about the fighters, it's about this, it's about that, I think a lot of laymen out there and a lot of casuals want to hear the story. They want to hear about the family life. They want to hear about the coaches, etc. So I think Dom's effectively played his part in the promotion. And also from Dom's point of view, if he thinks he can get a psychological edge over Bomac and over Khan and do anything he can to help Kell Brook's situation, he's going to do that. So I don't worry about it too much. I think the one thing I will say, and I'm always open, is I don't think Dom's one of these coaches who thinks he can transform fighters into Superman, where there are other coaches out there that's all you hear about. I think that's I'm talking about. Those coaches, they're amazing, they're fantastic, and they'll tell you how wonderful they are. I think Dom's just enjoying the moment, and I sound like I'm defending Dom. I'm just trying to anticipate maybe how he's coming across, but from his point of view, he's said himself he's going to be winding down at some point, and it's unlikely that he's going to be taking on any more fighters. So he might look at this as his last big, massive fight in the spotlight. The spotlight's on everybody right now, and I guess they're just soaking up the moment.
Yeah, he's put his time in, and he Flex.
Oh, it has.
We'll wish him well. How do you see the fight panning out? What's the tactical breakdown, Julian?
I think tactically, this is just a brilliant fight to break down, and obviously this is why I really appreciate letting me on here so I can do this. So there are so many things at play right now, and it's the case of if you look at both fighters, we know it's making the weight is a big part of this. We know that who's got enough left in the tank is a massive part. It's not really who's the best fighter between Khan and Brook. It's who's the best fighter right now in 2022. And ultimately, that's going to pan out. I also think whenever you get two fighters who are clearly past the prime, I don't think there's anybody who can predict this fight with certainty. Everybody says they can, but they're talking about 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Today, right now, I don't think anyone, I will make a prediction, but I don't think anybody can predict this fight with certainty. So it's a case of whose skills have aged better. And what I mean by that is obviously, that reflexes and speed are one of the first things to go. Punch resistance is that also goes, as fighters get towards a later stage of the career. The punch never leaves them. And I'll always go when I get two fighters head to head who are past the best. I'll always go with the fighter who I believe to have the better textbook style, because fighters who rely more on reflexes and more on movement, that is one of the first things to go. And I won't go into it just yet, but I think that Brook certainly has more of a textbook style and he carries more power. So it's who's still got the right skills left at this point, not as opposed to who's got this the skills, but the right skills left at this point. So I will see it going. It's a case of which goes first, Khan's movement and Khan's legs, or Kell Brook's face and his, his skin and his skeleton and all those kind of things, because he will mark up. Kell Brook will mark up. There's absolutely no doubt about that. He will get damage again in this fight. So for me, which one goes first? Khan's mobility and movement, can he maintain that for 12 rounds, or does Kell Brook mark up to the point that he just can't continue? I also think it's an obvious thing to say who wants it most, but how I would rephrase this one as well, Russell, is I'd say which millionaire wants it most, because that we see fighters who are tremendously brave fighters sometimes later on in their career surrender. If you think of Nigel Benn against Steve Collins, how he just meekly he just took the cash and he just surrendered. And it's almost like you reflect about these things. I've got children, I've got family, I've got to live my life, the rest of my life. And I think they tend to bow out. So if you look at Khan and Brook, Amir Khan has definitely been one of the bravest fighters we've seen on these shores. Absolute balls like a rhino. And I think Brook took his beating against Golovkin. I know Don pulled him out, but those guys have shown a lot of heart. But if you fast forward a little bit and you look more recently, and then you look at Brook, for example, against Crawford, or if you look at Khan against Crawford, that wasn't a clear low blow. That was Khan who just lost the heart to carry on, as far as I'm concerned. He looked for a way out. And there was also something a little bit more surrender. And I appreciate the orbital bone issue. There was more of a surrender with Brook against Spence. And then we saw Brook against Crawford again, and he got hurt and he got wobbled, but he just kind of like fell to pieces. And so for me, it's a case of who really is up for the battle as well. Who's prepared to just lay it on the line and prepared to live with this for the rest of the life. And I certainly sense that Brook is the one who's chased this fight more. And I sense Brook is going to be the one who's prepared to go through what he needs to go through to get the win. So that's one element of it. So how I see it panning out is, will Khan use his movement early on? Now, I'd like to think the answer is yes, but because we know that fighters lose that movement and lose those legs. Look at Ali, look at Larry Holmes, look at Ray Leonard when he fought Hearns a second time, and the legs and the movement is one of the things that goes quite early. So you've seen Khan, and you've seen the gloves are off and some of the breakdown and some of the things he's been working on. And this coach, who doesn't fucking know him, he doesn't know anything about him, he doesn't know what makes him tick. They can tell you what they want on these documentaries and these previews, but the coach doesn't really know him. He's someone who's come across a massively successful fighter like Crawford, and he looks like he's trying to get Khan to stand a little bit more on the spot. You could see the things, what he's doing. He's holding his feet more, he's dropping his height, he's turning the knuckles over. And that seemed a little bit unnatural for me. So if he's advising, because Khan's legs are not what they used to be, Khan to stand in the pocket with Brook, or stand at least at that mid-range, that's going to prove disastrous as far as I'm concerned. So I hope that's not the game plan. I anticipate Khan to use the movement, but every time Khan gets dropped is when he engages. Every single time. If you think of the Danny Garcia fight, he engaged, he got dropped. If you think that might sound like a straight, silly thing, but is whenever he engages, against Gomez, whoever, and he lets his shots go in the mid-range, he gets dropped. And that is a fact. That's proven to be the case. So I think he's got to be so disciplined, and he's got to move for 12 rounds. And I hope that's the game plan, and I hope that's what this Bomac's been having him doing. I think my instinct, and I'm going to cut to the chase, my instinct is he's going to engage one time too many. And I think Brook is not going to collect the damage and the collateral damage early on to the point that he has to get pulled out. And I suspect Brook's going to catch up with him after about between rounds 4 and 6. Now, that might seem quite an outlandish prediction. It's definitely not a confident prediction, Russell. It's really not a confident prediction. It's a prediction what I think we know right now, putting the styles together. It's not a prediction that I'm massively confident with. 6-7 years ago, Khan would have beaten Brook. He'd have too much movement, too much speed, too many guns for him. I think he would have he could have maintained that for 12 rounds. But I just don't think the movement's going to last. I don't think it's the right time in his career. And I just think Brook is going to seize the moment tomorrow night and is going to put on a spectacular performance.
Do you feel that if Amir Khan gets beat badly, the 5 million plus will cushion the blow?
It always doesn't it? But the proud men as well, aren't they? They are really proud men, and ultimately, you spend your millions or you live in your big mansion. You got to live with yourself, haven't you? And I'm surprised that Khan's taken this fight. I think everyone's been saying the same thing this last few weeks, haven't they? Khan didn't need to take this fight. So is he taking it for the 5 million plus? Is he taking it because he just wants to put an exclamation mark on his legacy? Or does he just dislike Kell Brook so much that he wants to just beat him up? Because, you know, you get all these fights over the years where they say, oh, there's bad blood, and it's just theatre. These guys don't like each other. There's a lot of resentment between the two. The resentment's a little bit like Hagler and Leonard, when Hagler thought that, you know, Leonard was the media darling and the American dream and everybody loved him, and Hagler was the blue collar worker who didn't quite get that respect that he deserved and the paydays that he deserved. I think there's an element of that around this fight. Brook definitely has felt disrespected, and I think he's hungry and I think he's angry, but obviously he's got to control those emotions tomorrow night. I'll keep saying it, Russell, it's not a prediction with certainty. It's just, I think the legs and the chin will go a hell of a lot quicker than the power and the textbook style of Brook. And that's why I'm going with Brook.
What do you think about the fight selling out quick and the hype around it, and the predicting 1 million buys now? I've just been seeing on TV, and there were 2,500 at weigh-in apparently. What do you think about the hype around it? Do you think that it's a damned indictment of boxing as a whole when we've dragged these two out the coffins?
Yeah.
And everybody's losing their mind over it. Good luck to both fighters. They've both been great servants and they've took risks in fights that they didn't have to. You know, Brooks fought out his comfort zone and Khan, but do you think that cost us nothing else for boxing fans to hold on to? This is that moment that we've been waiting for a while, because the Joshua things, no, we haven't really been able to get up for a fight for Joshua for a while, have we? He's like just gone through motions anyway, old men, and
yeah.
You know, what do you think? Do you think that's about right? This is as good as it's going to get for fans at the moment.
I think it's a really good summary of what you've just said, because I'm feeling as well today when I've had a half day off today from work, and when I watched the weigh-in, and I'm feeling it. I was, oh, it's past the best, a load of rubbish, and I've kind of the last few weeks I've been talking about it, thinking about it, and I'm feeling like, regardless of the stage of their career, this is big fight week. There's an electricity in the air that's not been around for some time. It's either a wonderful thing, Russell, or it's a really damning indictment on the sport that two past their best fighters who neither of them hold any kind of title are now creating the biggest buzz in boxing. And it just shows when boxing's done right, when the fights are done right, it's fucking brilliant sport. It's a fantastic sport. And I never understood why those two didn't get it together. I always think it was, I mean, you've just said before, it's definitely because neither of them's afraid of each other. They've been in with Golovkin and Canelo, and Khan's been in with a who's who.
Yeah, well, they've milked it, haven't they, Julian? They've milked every other avenue, and there's nowhere to go, is there?
That's exactly right, and that's what they've done. And
it's like a kick sand in fans' face, aren't they?
Yeah, I feel annoyed because it's a cash grab, and we're bound to pay for it. You know, we can stand on our principles and say, "Oh, I'm not interested."
But that much time invested in both of them, haven't we, Babby?
Yeah, and that's it. You think, do you know what? I've gone on about this for so long, and I wanted to see this for so long. I'm not going to miss it now and stand on my principles, knowing it's 6, 7, 8 years too late. I'm going to watch the fight, and I'm probably going to moan about it afterwards. And after 3 rounds, they're both knackered, and probably going to say, "Oh God!" But it is where we're at with boxing, and that what you just said is they've exhausted every other avenue, and all roads now have led to this. So Khan it's Brook or retirement, and Brook it's kind of obscurity or Khan, and that's where we've got. So it's such a shame but I am glad that they're fighting, and everyone's going to be saying this. And I'm not hammering Eddie Hearn, but he has to look in the mirror and say, why could I not make that fight? Why can somebody who's effectively a new promoter, someone like, you know, Ben Shalom, how can he get these guys together, get them to talk, get them to agree, and Adam Smith, and get them to fight when Eddie was unable to do that? So it's kind of, yes, it's way too late, but had Matchroom jumped ship 5 years ago and gone to the zone, maybe we'd have got the fight 5 years ago. Maybe we'd have seen it earlier, because the common denominator in this, it was either Khan out of spite, who didn't want to give Brook a payday, that's a possibility, or it was Eddie, who's just a man who won't compromise whatsoever and wants to be the main feature on the show. So there's a lot of people need to look themselves in the mirror. And whilst, you know, earlier this week I was criticizing, you know, Adam Smith and Sky and Ben Shalom for I don't know the guy's name, the Geordie Shore guy. I'll give them credit for putting this together, because is it their fault, Russell, that they've put it together so late, or is it the fault of everybody else and they've finally managed to get this fight on? So I think it's a good fight. I think it's not a great fight, but I do think it'll be an exciting fight, and I think there'll be a few moments in that fight.
Yeah, Eddie has been interviewed this week. I've just watched it now, and he said that he said, Eddie, what do you think to this fight? Are you going to watch it? He said, nah, I'll probably not be watching it. I've got other things to do. I'll probably be out with missus. He'll be watching, trust me. But because people will be sending it to him on Twitter. But Eddie says he won't be watching, and that both fighters are finished and past the sell-by date. But yet he bid on the fight more money, but he wanted options on them. See where I'm coming from?
Look, what's more embarrassing? He's saying that these guys, you know, they're past the best. At least they can still fucking fight, unlike KSI and these other guys who he's promoted. It's like, you know, don't say this fight's, you know, it's past the best. You've been dying to get this fight on for whatever reason. You probably wanted a bigger slice of the pie, so it didn't work. You've been dying to put this fight on. You've not been able to do it. You're happy to put KSI on. You're happy to put these novelties on. You're happy to put some of these guys on, you know, and tell us that Conor Ben's the next Roberto Duran.
And Doug Algieri up. And what's Conor? The Doug Algieri and Conor Ben. If these fighters are finished, Conor Ben all week's been calling out the winner with Eddie Hearn.
Listen, Conor Ben, you can call out who you want. I don't know you've done that, because I've not been watching you, because right now all eyes are on Khan and Brook. Right or wrong, prime or past the best, they can't stand it. They're doing anything they can to just get a little sound bites out there. Right now, anything else in boxing, in British boxing right now, nobody cares about anything else. The only thing that people care about right now is Khan and Brook. And
I've got mates. We've all
criticised it. Sorry, Russell. We've all criticised it. We're all watching it.
Yeah, well, I've got mates who are having like gatherings at their houses, and you know, it won't be barbecues because there's barbecues flying up and down fucking lanes around it. Just seeing them flying down into cow fields.
Insane.
No, mate, listen. There's a lot of people I know are going to be watching it. They're having gatherings around their house and that. Pubs have got it on around here. Pubs that don't normally have.
Exactly.
Because they stopped pay-per-view a while back. These are pubs, Conisbrough and surrounding areas. Edlington, Old Edlington, blah, blah, blah. A lot of people are interested in this fight, and Eddie's missed the boat because I can assure you Eddie would have wanted a bigger slice of cake than Boxer would getting out this. And Eddie, don't forget, they have all full control over all burger vans and everything around it and all food and beverage and all that. They have the lot. Now, whether Boxer and Sky or whatever have conceded a bit on that, I don't know, but I can assure you if Eddie bid more for the fight, all added up and everything in commercially, it wouldn't have been as more. If he does that sound right? Yeah, because they would have gone with as much money as they could. So
yeah, and that's why, isn't it? That's why he's not been able to put the fight on. You know, it's a little bit like the Dave Allen situation when you talked about Dave Allen getting offered like a big number from Frank Warren. And Eddie's like, no, you're worth more than that. And he prices himself out of everything, doesn't he? He prices his
He wants
fighters
to
out.
control everything, but with the David Allen situation, this is from people who I know were involved in that. Dave Allen, to be fair to him, and he's not sharpest tool in box, he might think he is, but he stayed loyal to Eddie Hearn. He rung Eddie Hearn up and he said, look, I just want to stay loyal to Matchroom. I've been invited to a VIP, as a VIP with my mates, to a Bricktop show, whoever it were fighting. I'm not sure if it was the bar or whatever. They've offered him a package, and if he got beat, other fights down the line. Obviously, Frank's got a stable. He could have put him in with Gorman and all that kind of people, and Adelaide. And he's offered him this package, and Eddie Hearn said, oh, I can match that, and blah, blah, blah. Well, he didn't, did he?
No.
And Dave's on shelf, and Darren Barker got involved as well. Tell him you want this much. And after Darren Barker said he should retire, he didn't want to train him for a Dorian Darch fight, did he? But he would have trained him. He would have trained him to go in with the bar for big money.
For that 10,
yeah, tell him you want an extra whatever, and I'll have my cut of that. But he didn't want to get up. He couldn't. Darren Barker couldn't get up for a darts fight, so he told him to retire. So Dave Allen, and because he's not from money, when he puts his head down on pillar at night, and I know because I've heard back, all he'll think about is that money he were offered and what he could have done with it. Because Dave doesn't spend now. He don't walk around like man at C&A, does he? Do you know what I mean? He's not in pubs. He don't drink and smoke. He don't sniff beak, does he? Do you know what I mean? He plays on his PlayStation with his mates all night. He's a bit immature. He'll watch boxing and probably get a takeaway and stuff like that. So my heart goes out to Dave Allen for that, because he's put his time in. But look at the beatings he's had off them, through that lot. When he fought Lewis Ortiz, Dave Allen's tongue was doing that. You know, have you ever seen a tongue split up the side, Julian?
Yeah.
You know, when it splits up the side. Well, Dave's tongue split up the side. They didn't stitch it. I was showing me it. And it was like a gel all the way up the side. All that silicon, you know, silicon around the window. All the way up, and all like that. They could hardly eat for 3 weeks, pissing blood. He got battered against Ortiz. They don't care. They don't care about that. He took that punishment against Joker, David Price. You can go on forever. He had a life and death with Bracamante. Look, well, I know that wasn't a Matchroom show, the Joker one, but he would have said, "Oh, I'm going to fight on the Schaefer show." Eddie he would have gone through everything with Eddie because he stayed loyal. But Eddie were coming out with things, and IFL saying you're part of Matchroom family, but he still. And Dave would have felt nice about that. He would have felt wanted, so he would have had a duty of care in his head. Oh, Frank's offered me this, or Bricktop as I call him. He would have stayed loyal to him, but they weren't loyal to Dave, and then Dave retired, didn't he? And then he wanted to come back. They didn't want to know, and he would have thought, God, I thought Eddie was my mate. There's no mates in this game, and Eddie doesn't do
no mates in
fucking ice, man.
There's few mates in this one. I feel sorry for Dave Allen as well, because you know I always hear he's a really good guy and he came across like that. But sometimes real working class lads who are quite humble and let's just say naive. I'm not going to be rude, who are quite naive. Yeah, they have this kind of submissive deference behaviour towards people of a certain standing, almost like that, yes sir, no sir. And they think that these guys are not going to look out for them. Now, listen, we spoke about this all the time, but loyalty is a two-way thing, but that's if it even exists. Yeah, I'm loyal to my family and I'm loyal to my close friends. As long as I know that I'm going to get back from them what I'm going to prepare to give them, I'll be loyal. But it's like the fighters who were loyal to Eddie Hearn and to Matchroom, the ones who sold tickets were active and they got paid well. The ones who didn't sell tickets, where are they now? They were during the pandemic. We saw the popular fighters coming out and fighting, and we saw the less popular fighters having to wait to fight until all this COVID was over. And loyalty in boxing, it's just such an oxymoron. It's a massive contradiction. It doesn't exist. Loyalty exists when you get lads in amateur gyms who are mates and they go support each other all the time and spar with each other. But honestly, I've seen boxers, I've seen managers, and I've seen fighters, and I'm not going to mention names. I've seen fighters go through camp And then their training partner has stayed with them all the way through the camp, even when they didn't have any fights coming up. And then I've seen that guy fight. And then at some point, the other fighter's got a fighter, you know, he's got a fight. And then they ask the guy who they've been helping, saying, I've got a fight coming up. Your fight's done now. Can you stay in gym a few weeks? Fuck them off straight away. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it in my own gym. It's like people aren't loyal. Most people will do what's best for themselves. And it's shit, mate. And it's part of life. And Dave Allen he'll feel that deep down when it's quiet, has those quiet moments at home. He'll feel that. And you know what? Dave Allen didn't deserve that because he's put on some entertaining fights. Yes, he was limited, but he was brave. He was exciting. He was charismatic. But he's put on some entertaining fights for Matchroom, you know, and he didn't deserve that kind of treatment. And what I fucking hate fakes. And I saw when Dave Allen was coming back, and then Eddie was giving it, well, I told him to retire. I don't want him to get hurt, and he was not in a great place. Look, let's not make out now that you wouldn't use him if the opportunity came up. And let's not make out you're worried about his health. Because do you know what? And this is people hate when I say this. This is the hypocrisy of boxing. If you were really concerned about someone's health, really concerned about someone's health, you wouldn't be involved in boxing. It's a fucking brutal sport. It's brutal. People who get away from boxing without major damage still pay a price. All fighters pay a price for long careers. That's just that some of them pay a bigger price than others. So let's not make out that we're in this lovey-dovey, champagne and strawberry sport. This is a fucking brutal sport. It's male prostitution. It's combat sports, and that's exactly what it is. And we all have to say, look, we love it. We love it since day one. Man has liked watching other men fight. Man has liked fighting. It's primitive, but it's a fucking brutal sport. Let's not pretend we're worried about Eddie Hearn. Don't pretend you're worried about Dave Allen's health, his well-being.
I feel for Dave because he had obviously, when he retired, they give him red carpet treatment at Sky. He went on all them little magazine shows and all that, Soccer AM and blah, blah, blah. They had him down to Sky and that. He would have loved all that. And he's a character, but when he's come back, he probably thought, I'll come back now. And there was no room at the inn. He must have thought, and he's had to go back to Dennis, right?
Yeah.
Who he left.
He's a right drop down. Yeah.
But when he left Dennis said, your job is to go to gym and train, and you get paid. I'm not going to say how much. I think I probably said on here before, but Dennis was paying him a wage to go to gym every week, and he weren't going. So Dennis said, simple, collect your cards, get gone. Which is fair enough. He put the time in it. So he left Dennis after 7 fights, undefeated, 6 wins, 1 draw, no defeats. He's gone back to Dennis's, and it would have been a reality check, fighting on a Dennis show, on a ticket deal, in a car park, with no red carpet, no media, and he would have thought. So, but what should have kicked in his mind is, I'm going to show these bastards. But it hasn't happened, has it? It hasn't happened. I know he's out next month and that up north and that and fighting up north. Well, good luck to him. But good luck. And he's 30 next month. I don't know if he'll get back to what he were. I don't know. I hope he does. But
he's going through the motions, isn't he?
Yeah, he can't let go in looking in past and that. And it's a shame. But that if he keeps hanging about, he might get that call from Eddie Hearn and that. But Eddie Hearn is his mate. And that's where he made the mistake. Other people made that mistake. O'Hara Davis made it. We know what happened to O'Hara Davis, don't we? He got thrown to Wolves, didn't he, for something he didn't even do.
Yep.
Or something he didn't know nothing about. Do you know what I mean? And that's just boxing, isn't it? But speaking of loyalty, I want to mention let me just see if I've got this here. Look. The reappearing man has piped up, Tony Bellew, and he said, a man who continuously delivers and makes sure you are paid extremely well should be shown loyalty, in my opinion. But hey, not everybody thinks like I do. I suppose I'm all for fighters going their own way when they aren't being paid or are being robbed. If you're not, then be loyal. He's having a little bit of a pop. I've been told Dylan White and also Kell Brook. But Kell Brook has to look after himself. So does, just like Eddie Hearn does, fighters do, don't they? Just like promoters. And if it is aimed at Dylan White, I think it is as well as Kell Brook. It looks like Dylan White could be signing that. The WBC have invented a belt for him, haven't they? The WBC World Title Union belt. So it looks like Dylan White might sign tonight before midnight deadline. So I think that's good, isn't it? If he does,
I hope so. I hope he signs, and I hope he trains hard and he performs, and obviously he comes out of the ring covered in glory, win or lose. But yeah, I've always liked Tony Bellew. Some guys get called out on your show. I like them. Doesn't mean to say that I always think they're right. It doesn't always mean to say that what they're actually saying I believe to be true, or that I believe they believe to be true. So first of all, Tony Bellew's he's talking about loyalty towards Matchroom, but he's been paid very, very well, promoted very well. He's been a big ticket seller and has been popular, but Bellew's brought big numbers and big money to Matchroom. If he didn't bring that, all those things I've just mentioned, there'd be no loyalty from Eddie Hearn. It's not loyalty. It's called business. It's just
he can fight.
business.
Bellew can fight as well, can't he?
Bellew's always been able to fight. I've seen him spar with Mark Hobson when he just turned over. I've seen him on the 4-rounders, 6-rounders when Sykes boxed a couple of Frank Maloney shows. Bellew can fight, and he's got a good ring IQ. Actually, I think he can navigate the ring. He's got good power. He's got good everything. He's a world-class fighter. But this talking about showing loyalty to Eddie Hearn, it's fine because Tony Bellew is very, very rich, and I'm sure he might even make more money out of boxing if he decides to come back. So I understand that, but it's almost like it's fake. It's built on fabrication. It's a fake relationship. It's like, as long as you're doing okay by me, I'll do okay by you, or high five, here's a hug, and there's all that kind of stuff. But it just doesn't wash with me. I talk about this all the time because one of the reasons we've done several pieces is the Gary Sykes situation, which we won't go into. But ultimately, I now see Gary Sykes often. I speak to him, I text him, and we have contact with each other. You've met him, he's been up here. Who gives a fuck about Gary Sykes right now?
No one.
Nobody, mate. Nobody. So talk to Gary Sykes, Tony Bellew, about loyalty. You were on England squad with him. Have you checked in on him?
Well, they were on England squad together, Tony and Gary.
Yeah, they know each other well. Yeah. I'm not knocking Tony Bellew. I'm making an observation on how this sport is and how life is, how people are. Amir Khan was an England squad with Gary. Everybody knows Gary's been struggling. He's been on Tris Dixon's podcast, various other things. I'm not talking about sending him a little inbox message on Instagram. I'm talking about ring him up, go see him. How are you doing? I've heard about the belt. What's the situation with the belt? Can I help? Can I have a word with Rob Smith? Can I have a word? No one's fucking give Gary Sykes.
Or can Tony Bellew put something on his Twitter to his loads of followers?
He's got massive followers, he's got a massive platform. So if you are watching this, Tony, check out the Gary Sykes story. Forget what you feel about Russell and Russell's platform. This is about Gary Sykes. So who's looking out for that kid now? Who's looking out for that kid? And that's why I get frustrated, because loyalty, fucking loyalty, doesn't exist it rarely exists in life, and it certainly doesn't exist in boxing. And that's not me being cynical. That's me talking from experience, just like that you've been involved, things I've seen, things I've heard, things you hear, things that get done in this sport. It's all about cash. It's about cash on every level. This sport is about cash. So just say it as it is, call it out to be what it is. And you know what? I respect that a lot more than when people just start basically just hugging each other and high-fiving each other and being mates. We shall see. Let's see what these relationships are like in 10 years.
Yeah. So to sum up, Brook, Khan, Brook, however you want to call it, who have you got then?
Brilliant fight. Past its sell-by date. It'll be full of excitement. I've got Brook inside 6. It's not a confident pick. It's a pick based on, I think he'll have not more left than Khan, but he'll have the right attributes left on the table. And that'll see him come through. And on a personal level, I like them both. I don't love them both. They're not my favourite fighters, if that makes sense. So you kind of like, I feel, like sometimes you watch a fight, Russell, and you don't know who you're rooting for, and then you start watching it, and you find yourself pulling towards one. My instinct is that I want Brook to beat him.
Well,
and I think on the night I'll be pulling for Kell Brook.
I'm going to go Khan inside 6, but when I got bookies in morning, Denby bookies, I'm gonna put 50 on draw, because I think that they've got to do it again at some point, haven't they?
That might be a good bet, And the reality is, right? We want two things, don't we? We want a good fight, and we want both fighters to just be like healthy and come out the ring and not get hurt, and that's all we want.
So I'm gonna have 50 on draw. Okie dokie. I think we've covered that. We spoke about Conor Ben calling it winning art, but yeah, Eddie Earn says they're both shot to bits.
Yeah.
We spoke about
if he's calling the winner out, Russell, then it proves the point that he's only interested in digging fighters up, doesn't it?
I want to talk about the Gad. You know the Gad is, don't you?
He's hilarious.
Well, when Anthony Joshua turned over, the Gad was saying he was going to be like Muhammad Ali, and he was going to transcend the sport and that. This is in the Telegraph. Well, the Gad's colleague Jim White's done something in the Telegraph, and it's the 12 most overrated athletes in sport, and they've got Joshua in there. And isn't that ironic?
I knew that was coming up. As you know, I don't cover a lot of this stuff in detail. You live and breathe it. But when you said that, the Gad's colleague, I thought, it's the kind of spineless thing to say, you know what? Give me a bit of stick, but it's not coming from me. It's coming from a colleague.
They've refused him access, haven't they, the Gad, to Joshua?
Well, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I mean, he was really looking at step aside, wasn't he? And he just didn't get.
He just didn't want anybody exposing it, did he? And obviously Fury played the Gad like a cheap fiddle, didn't he?
Fury's a smart man. Fury knows how to. You don't have to be academically gifted to be able to work out how to play to people's strengths and to work people. And Fury's bloody brilliant at that. He's brilliant at social media. And Gareth A. Davies, eventually what he'll do is you piss one person off and you side with one person, then they get tired of you. And then eventually you'll go sniffing around somebody else. It's like those kids in the playground who have got plenty of cash, isn't it? The kids who have got, they've got the best football and they've got money and they've got a PlayStation or Atari back in the day, whatever. And they just go around and they're just trying to win popularity, you know what I mean? And after a while, you just think you're just a fucking dickhead, really. And they just get on your nerves, they're just playing the game. And I think that's what the Gad's doing. He's probably the least likely person to get involved in such a tough, brutal sport. And he's probably just thinking, his ego and, his manhood and all that. He's loving being around it. And eventually, I think his true self's come out. And I think he's just pissing people off. You could see the switch towards Fury, couldn't you, in the last 6 to 12 months from Joshua. And if Joshua's, fucked him off, who can blame him?
Did you see
the one thing I will say? Sorry, Russell. The one thing I will say, and I always say this, it's like, I'm talking now as I don't work for Sky, I don't work for anybody, so I can be as biased or as neutral as I want. That's up to me. I can just wear my hat on my sleeve, and people can just say, "Well, I agree with you or I don't." It doesn't make a difference to me. But when you work for a broadcasting company or when you work for a newspaper or anything like that, the laws of journalism, and he's a journalist, the laws of journalism, and you have to be neutral. You have to paint a neutral picture. Now, he's not neutral, is he? He's been on this team and then that team. And as you said, he really couldn't get his tongue any further up the Fury's arse in the last 6 months. And
eating his food for him.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, so he's not. It was a little bit like that with David Hay. I don't know him. I've never met him, but I once had a very, very brief exchange with the Gad on Twitter when I was on Twitter years ago, and he'd made a comment about David Hay was a 2-time world champion and he was a heavyweight champion of the world, and I just said it wasn't really a heavyweight champion of the world, and he fired back this tweet saying, hey, and I just says, that tells me that you know nothing about boxing. because, you know, David A actually inherited a belt. It was total bollocks, that heavyweight belt. It was, he beat it off somebody who had lost to somebody who lost to somebody who lost to Klitschko. And I just says it was like a bit like the Charles Martin belt that Anthony Joshua got. I forget the situation, but I basically just said that
Did
to
he
Gareth
fight that
Davies.
giant? He fought a giant for it, didn't he?
He fought Valoev, but Valoev had been beaten by Chagayev. Well, Chagayev basically had to give his belt up, didn't he? He beat Valoev. He had to give his belt up to fight Klitschko for the super title or whatever. And then that left the lowly WBA belt. So effectively, David Hay beat somebody who had already been dethroned, you know, an ex-champion. He beat an ex-champion for the vacant belt. And that doesn't make you a heavyweight champion of the world. It just means that you won a belt. You just won a belt that was thrown at you because you're a popular fighter. And I pointed that out to the Gad, and he kind of got his knickers in a twist over it. And I just thought, I'm not some casual here. I'm somebody who's got an actual sense of history, and I can go all the way back to, you know, to Jeffries, Fitzsimmons, and Corbett. Can you do that? And I just thought it was just showed what he was for me. It showed he was a casual who began reporting on boxing, and he's probably
the scissor kick he did yesterday. They were doing scissor kicks on internet, weren't they? Over Spencer Oliver's head on Sky.
I don't know. I can't.
Oh, like that. Don't do it. Don't do it. Oh, no.
I have said, though, I'm consistent, and I've said to you offline, Russell, I still find him hilarious. I don't know if I find him hilarious or the fact he's been christened the Gad. I think I'm smiling now because I fucking piss myself every time you do something on him. And now every time I see him, and when I saw him a couple of weeks ago in the background, it was whatever show it was, Sky, whatever, and Guns N' Roses came on, and he started doing the air guitar, and it was like,
oh,
it was fucking,
did it? Oh, yes, somebody sent me a
yeah, it was comedy. It was brilliant.
I only saw picture. He's oh no.
Yeah, I just thought, do you know what, Gareth, you're living your best life, mate, right now. And I was laughing. I thought, good on you. But look, I don't know him. He might be like a really nice guy, actually. I might have got him all wrong, but I just don't like sucking up. I never have done it. It's not for me.
Okay, moving on then from the adventures of the Gad.
Hmm.
I'm going to throw a couple of fights at you now. I want you to tell me who wins. Larry Holmes against Trevor Bryan.
Larry Holmes beats Trevor Bryan on a split decision now.
What if we fought now?
We can. Diane Holmes can wheel him out of his big mansion in Eastern Pennsylvania, and he's probably got a walking thing now. And I think Larry Holmes now would probably beat Trevor Bryan on a controversial split decision. In his prime, I don't think Trevor Bryan would have qualified as a sparring partner for Holmes.
Okay, because Larry Holmes learned his craft from early 70s sparring Ali, didn't he?
Ali, Joe Fraser, Ken Norton, Holmes sparred them all. And at Larry Holmes, as you know, he was the one fighter who was not tipped to do anything as a pro. He got stopped and then got disqualified.
He got overlooked for Olympics in Munich, didn't he?
He did. He got Dwayne Bobbick actually stopped him as an amateur. I think Holmes was 22-3 as an amateur, and Dwayne Bobbick, or was it Rodney Bobbick? I forget. Beat him a couple of times as an amateur, and Holmes wasn't spectacular, and he learned his craft, didn't he? And he just had a beautiful, educated left jab. And I remember reading the story about Larry Holmes and how he developed his left hand. He broke his right hand really early on in his career, and it was a bad break apparently. And he just continued to go to the gym and just train with one hand. And he just mastered the left jab just by going into the gym and training with a cast on. I don't know how true that is, but
yeah, it's a true story, that.
Yeah,
he worked in a steel mill, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
worked in a steel mill, 12, 14-hour shift. Then he used to go to gym, didn't he? And he hurt his hand in steel mill, and he went to gym and just was jabbing it back, wasn't he, 1,000 times.
It was quite a late start, was Larry, wasn't he? He wasn't somebody who turned, like 11-year-old amateur like some of these guys. But Holmes was my personal favourite when I was growing up. Him and Ray Leonard. I'll always go towards the boxer as opposed to the brawler, and I love Larry Holmes. And I'm going to be honest now. I'm just going to be open. I've never seen Trevor Bryan box. I've just been honest. I don't really wish to. So maybe I'm being unkind, and maybe Trevor Bryan would have beaten a prime Larry Holmes.
What do you think about the situation with Don King and Frank Warren making the WBA regular fight for Dubois and Trevor Bryan? Do you think that Dubois deserves that?
He definitely doesn't deserve, but deserve and getting, as we know in this generation, not just in boxing but in life. This is where we're at, isn't it? We're talking about the Geordie Shaw guy, not attacking him, just talking about the Geordie Shaw guy who's got a Sky contract now for 5 fights with Boxer. He doesn't deserve that. He doesn't deserve that at all.
He only had 7 MMA fights, didn't he?
Yeah, it doesn't mean you deserve just because you train hard and you've been training for 18 months. It's like, my daughter's studying to be she's doing a law degree at the moment. She's been studying for 5 years and she's going to have to do another year. And then she'll start again, then right at the bottom. And it's like she might be 15, 20 years before she gets to the stage where she's got a really good career and earning money. And people are telling me that, oh, do you know what? This Geordie Shaw guy, he's dedicated his life for 18 months. 18 fucking months.
You could have that as an amateur, couldn't you, before your first fight?
It's crazy. It's crazy. This is what people think now, isn't it? It's like, I have nothing against him, whoever the lad is. I forget his name. Good luck to him.
Aaron Chalmers.
Yeah, I hope he does well, and I hope he doesn't get hurt. But ultimately, if you're really, really, really serious about boxing, he was only 34. So when he got into it at 32, 32 and a half, he would have gone to an amateur gym. He would have tried to get carded, get his medical as an amateur, and he would have gone into the novice championships maybe in his second season, the under 10 developments. So if you were serious, that's what you'd have done. Listen, you just fancy it because your ego's huge and you can make a lot of money because you're well known. For what, I don't know, but you're well known. And it's not knocking the guy. It's just, what about the kids? I know kids who have been amateur for 10, 11, 12 years. The lads from Leeds, lads who were with Mark Bateson. Mark Bateson's a good guy, good manager, good promoter. And they've done 10, 11, 12 years on the amateur circuit. They've gone in the elites, they've gone in the ABAs, they've done all sorts. And then they've turned pro, they're struggling to selling tickets. The Mark puts them on his shows. They've done 3-4 years going under the radar. What about those kids then who have done 15 years? What about those kids getting their opportunity? Because I'm telling you now, Mark Bateson's got kids in the gym who would absolutely destroy this guy. They could give him 2 stone, they'd destroy him. So what about their opportunity? Who cares about them? And as I just said, like you mentioned, Daniel Dubois, earning and getting are complete 2 different things, aren't there? It's a society now where I'm going to preach now. Sorry, Russell. Everybody wants something straight away, don't they? No one's prepared to work at anything. I want to be a pro boxer. I don't want to do the amateur thing. I don't want to do the 4-rounders on the small halls and the VIP shows. I don't want to do that. I want to be on the big events. I want it now. You know what? I want some food. I'm just going to go on Just Eat. I want my food in 10 minutes. Not prepared to cook anything and to take my time and curate anything. I want it now. And that's the society that we're in now, isn't it? Buy now, pay later. Seeing that car out there, I love that car. I'm not going to put money away every week, and I do sound old-fashioned now. I'm not going to save up for it. I'm not going to buy it when I can afford it. I want it now. And do you know why I want it now, Russell? Because I deserve it. I deserve it. Fucking hell, you don't deserve anything. I was brought up, you work for it. You work for it, you save for it, and you get it. Or, in the case of boxing, you pay your dues. I mentioned it before, I used to work with Mally McIver towards the end of his amateur career. Mally McIver was a brilliant servant for amateur boxing. He had about 86, 87 amateur fights. He fought some really good kids, some of the best kids in the world. He was in, all kinds of tournaments. It was round about the ABA semis, quarters, every single time. He went pro. He had 14, 15 pro fights. He never got on TV. He never got above, 600-700 quid for a 4-rounder, for a 6-rounder. Mally McIver now is a GB coach, but didn't Mally McIver deserve his moment on Sky? Because I'll tell you something, he'd earned it. And then these guys out there, just because they've been on a fucking reality TV show and had a couple of fights in a cage, they think they can just jump into this situation. So I don't blame the Geordie Shaw guy. I don't hate the player, I hate the game. And I blame where we are right now, that people are getting opportunities that they haven't earned, they don't deserve, and they're not good enough. I'll say now, I'll tell you now, I'll go on record. This guy doesn't win a British title. Doesn't get near a British title.
Yeah, I
Doesn't
agree.
get near one.
Okay. Ernie Shavers against Charlie Martin. If they fought at the peaks.
Acorn, what a fighter. Ernie Shavers was at times vulnerable to big punches, but if he could catch up with Larry Holmes was absolute best in that 7th round in their rematch in 1979. He can certainly catch up with Charlie Martin. Shavers, within 3 rounds, he would just wipe him out. He might not even break sweat, to be honest, but I mean, Charles Martin has got to be, and this is no disrespect to Charles Martin, but he's got to be one of the 5 worst belt holders of all time. It has to be.
Well, across the board, in all weights.
Across the board, we've seen some poor ones. I think people always talked about Primo Carnera, didn't they? Saying he was the worst heavyweight champion in history. This was before this modern age that we've got now. Primo Carnera would have beaten Charles Martin, and it wasn't that bad. Charles Martin, I thought, was dreadful. I thought it was cringeworthy that that Joshua actually fought him way too early, by the way. But I just thought it was awful. So Charles Martin, yeah.
Okay, so you've got Ernie Shavers doing Charlie Martin. What about Dillian White against Big George Foreman? The can man. Anybody who wants it can get it against Big George.
Well, I'll quickly answer this one, and it's no disrespect to Dillian White. George Foreman was a great fighter, but I would put my mortgage on George Foreman, the second version of George Foreman. Never mind the fearsome 1972 heavyweight champion of the world. Destroyed
73, won it, didn't he?
73. So destroyed Ken Norton, destroyed Joe Frazier in Kinston Zaire. I would put my money on the second version of George Foreman, the one who beat Michael Mora, the one who, went the distance with Holyfield to knock out.
Who did Jerry Cooney?
Yeah, it was brutal, wasn't it, when he did Jerry Cooney in 2 rounds. Foreman all day long. And this, what you're basically building up to now is the depth now. So people talk about the modern era, the depth of the heavyweights in the 70s and 80s compared to today. You know what? Even fighters like Mike Weaver, who had quite an average record when he came to prominence, did Mike Weaver. Guys like Mike Weaver, Jerry Coetzee, Greg Page. Greg Page was lazy, but he was a massively talented fighter. They would have a field day today. Absolute field day.
England Thomas, Tony Tubbs.
Yeah, those guys. We thought that was like an average set of heavyweights at the time, didn't we?
Bruno against Dillian White. How would that go?
I think Big Frank would probably win that one. Bruno certainly was staged to some extent, but he had a hell of a right hand, and he had balls. And the truth is, Dillian White's shown. I don't know if he's got the strongest chin now, if I'm being honest. I mean, he's been knocked out, he's been leveled twice, and he's been dropped a few times. So I don't rate him that much, but I do hope he puts on a good performance against Fury.
Okay. Steffi Bull piped up yesterday, put something out saying that Josh Taylor Catterall should be pay-per-view and that Brooke Khan shouldn't be. Do you feel that he's echoing words that Eddie Hearn said earlier in the day in an interview? And he took it upon himself to be the PR guy for Eddie like Bellew?
Well, it sounds like it, because I don't think you can say what's pay-per-view, what's not pay-per-view. I'm probably against pay-per-view as a concept, because I spend £25 a month on Sky Sports. I don't watch any other sport, but if they got me by the balls, then I'm gonna pay it. But the thing is with Catterall and Josh Taylor, yeah, Josh Taylor's probably the best fighter we have, but he's not massively well known right now. He's not massively marketable, and I think it's a good thing in being on a regular Sky platform. That will build him up to the point that, if he comes in, because even though he's had some fantastic wins, like he beat Ramirez, and all these guys he's beaten, the only one the British fan recognises would probably be O'Hara Davis. People Jack Catterall is not a household name. That's not being disrespectful to Jack Catterall. He's a damn good fighter, but he's not a household name. Taylor's not a household name yet. He's becoming well known, but he's not there yet. And he's not worthy of pay-per-view for the simple reason the guys who plan pay-per-view, the guys behind the scenes who do the analytics and look at the data and crunch all the data, they know he's not pay-per-view, and they know if they put him on pay-per-view, it would bomb because not enough people know who he is. And that's probably a sad indictment on the sport, but it's one of those things, isn't it? And I know Steffi as well, but people say things that are quite popular, don't they? So you can have sound bites and you can have little phrases that are quite popular. Oh, he's the most underrated fighter there's ever been, or he's done this, or he's the most avoided. And they become quite popular. Just because something's popular doesn't make it true. The fight tomorrow night is pay-per-view because those guys are huge names in Britain. Not just in boxing, but people know they are. They're household names. Amir Khan is definitely a household name. That's why it's pay-per-view. They're not pay-per-view because they're the two best welterweights in the world, because they're not. It's the big names. And I guess you get to the stage, you think they've both paid the dues. They're entitled to a big payday. But I just think, again, it goes back to what you said about Tony Bellew, is Eddie Hearn should speak for himself. Big promoter should speak for himself. They don't need other people to speak for them. And it's like me, you and I chat about things. We've been probably my 8th, 9th, 10th time I've been on your show now. And you'll say certain things, and very politely, if I don't agree with you, I'll tell you. You'll tell me if you don't agree with me. I'm not here to just go with your narrative, am I? I'm not saying, well, Russell's got this narrative. I'm going to say, I agree with you there. I agree with you there. I'll say, Dom Ingle. I know Dom. I like Dom. I've always got on with him. That end of, and you might disagree with me on some things, but these guys, they never ever tell what the truth, do they? And this is what you always talk about. You're in the gyms and you get the emails and you get the phone calls and all this kind of stuff. What people are saying online and what people are saying and tagging Eddie in and echoing Eddie Hearn and all these other people, it's not what they're fucking saying to the partners. It's not what they're saying to the mates when they're down the pub or when they're seeing in the corner shop. They're not saying that. And I think be true to yourself. And that's ultimately why, I'm on here and you've got your own channel, because you'll never be mainstream, because you don't want to be mainstream, because you don't want to talk mainstream. You don't want to...
On my own stream, me, I always have been.
You might as well, and that'll make you Marmite, and people will love you and people will hate you, but they will know that it's what you believe. They'll know that you're being honest with yourself. They won't say he's full of shit. They'll just say he's a bit of a twat, but they won't say he's full of shit because you're telling you know what I mean? You're telling the truth. And
you're called a lot worse.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I bet you have, mate. And I'm sure I have in your inbox. I hear about these things, but I'm not right bothered, mate.
Listen. Okay. Al Heyman's thrown a spanner in the works with Canelo. We had Earn. I mean, I keep looking on Hatman and Sporting Icons. They keep saying that Canelo signed a 2-fight deal, $85 million we had Earn, but he hadn't signed. Al Heyman's just blown Earn out at water with an $100 million offer for 2 fights for Canelo. So the saga continues, doesn't it? And what did I say months ago? Does anybody think for 1 minute that Al Heyman, who is a chess player, poker player, whatever he is, do they think that Al Heyman's going to get Canelo off Eddie Hearn and just hand him back to him? That all the pieces are on the board now. He's moving in for checkmate. They're all moving in for checkmate on Hearn because he shot his mouth off. Yeah. Joshua will be getting moved in on by Sky to finish Hearn off. And Heyman's moving in for Canelo now with PBC. All everything's pointing towards Eddie being squeezed out now. Because landscapes, when I work with Dennis, I don't like to bring this up because I've probably mentioned this before. He used to say to me, oh, God, you always lose your cool or go ranting off in front of people or in meetings and that. And I said, yeah, because fucking what the fuck is going on here? And he said, look, I've got something bubbling. I said, you've been saying that over 5 years because I used to lose my cool. I mean, we had a scrap in Bulgaria, me and Dennis. We'd had a drink and that, and we had a bit of a roll about, yeah. And because you've got two personalities that are going to clash over certain things. But Dennis is a pretty he's a pretty cool guy at times, and he never bites. So, but we did have a bit of a scrap in Bulgaria, a bit of a roll around. But point I want to make is that he'd say there's something bubbling, and I'd say, yeah. But then he'd say, look, don't worry, because the landscape always changes. It goes in cycles. And I'd say, yeah, okay. And it did. He had his time in the sun when he got Hatton, and he had Clinton and all that kind of thing. He managed to get Hatton away from Warren, didn't he? And Hatton went on his way to sign for Barry Earn then, by the way. Dennis nipped him with a carrier bag full of money. He said it on my channel. Everybody knows. The landscape changes, and I always think back to that. And you were right, you know, the landscape is changing, but it took a decade, hasn't it, for it to change.
Yep.
And people have got tired of the old apples and pears, cheeky Nando's, plot up and go on my son and Cougs and all that. And it's become a tired format now, hasn't it? And them casuals, they've like seen through it all kind of thing, haven't they? And I think this new generation fell for it, have they? This is why numbers have dropped, haven't they? And I think Eddie's struggling now, and I think that's good, because I want to see him suffer. He's never suffered anything in his life, you know. He's never had to go through what boxers have been through. This is why boxers might say my pal Eddie, and Eddie might say they're his pal. But I know for a fact, because I speak to some of the trainers and some boxers, when he walks out of that dressing room, they go, tosser. He's had it on a plate all his life. But Eddie might not know that. You see, they're not going to do that to his face because he holds all the cards, doesn't he? But he doesn't hold all of the cards now, does he? He's not the only game in town now, as we're seeing with Dylan White, as we've seen with Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields, as we're seeing with Brooke Khan, as we've seen with Tyson Fury going to Frank Warren. He doesn't hold all the cards now. And that's where he's a bit sore. And I've told you about this. We've spoken in confidence about this. I won't say what we spoke about, but when Carl Frampton left Eddie, that was the first time that I actually saw a chink in his armour.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, kind of thing?
Yeah, I do.
Because he's not had it all his own way. That was his first blip, and he hasn't had many blips after that, because he's pretty sure. Hey, listen, he's a fucking hard worker, and I admire hard work, me. My dad was a coal miner, as your dad were. We admire hard work. There's no shortcuts. I used to think there were shortcuts to getting the things that I wanted in life. There's no shortcuts. You've got to plot to get what you want. And eventually you get there. And I've got more or less what I want in life. I don't have any big aspirations to live in a big house like Eddie, but I'm happy with my lot. But there's no shortcuts. And nobody ain't going to come and take out off me because he'll say it's been gotten illegally this time. You see where I'm coming from? Yeah, whereas Eddie, he's had that blip, and I don't think he's handling it well. These blips he's having recently. See, does that sound right?
No, I think you're absolutely right. He'll get out, because the guys you've talked about, the Frank Warrens and the Bob Arams, they're massively resilient. They've been through the droughts. They've been through the recessions. They've had absolutely fuck all.
Bob Aram were going at it with Don King for 25 years. They hated each other, wanted to kill each other.
Non-stop, absolutely non-stop.
They were grassing each other up to FBI, just like Warren saying that Earns put him into taxman in this country, and he was saying so. He was more or less insinuating. Look, Warren and Earn are never going to get on. It's probably the biggest war in boxing. They despise each other. The families despise each other. They've been at it. Eddie's been at it 12 years with Warren. They put, 7, 8 fights on. That tells you, doesn't it? And then fights were only because they had to be made, because they're most of the mandatories. But point I want to make is Aram and King were at it from day one. Aram started promoting in '66. Don King in early 70s. When he's 71, he started with Ali with an exhibition. So they've been at it for donkeys. And Frank Warren's been at it. He's took the cartel on Frank Warren. You've got to give him credit. He's been shot. Frank Warren's like Michael Myers. Yeah. He just keeps coming back, doesn't he? Halloween. You think he's dead, and then they make another film. Frank Warren, I admire. I don't mean that. He's not the type of guy I want to say, hey, go in a pub, hey, Frank, what you having? Yeah. He's not. He won't get in my company like that. But I admire his resilience, and I'd like to think that my kids would have a bit of resilience like that in him. I think I've got a bit of resilience in me, like that, with what I've been through in my life, and Frank Warren has as well. So I admire that. Plus, he's from nothing, isn't he? From a council estate. So I admire that. Whereas Eddie Hills, this Iceman, or Essex opening bat fast bowl or whatever. He's just winged it, and he on back of his old man, hasn't he? And
I think so.
And he's run out of. I think he's just run out. Well, he's steaming into wicket like Bob Willis. Well, he's not steaming in now. He's a fucking spin bowler, isn't he? He's the Derek Underwood of fucking the South.
You can see it, can't you? Behaviour is everything, his language is everything, and body language is everything, and it's all out there. Listen, no one said Eddie Hearn isn't a hard worker. Nobody said he's not a good guy or a good dad or a good husband or a good friend. Nobody's saying that, but it does. You sometimes get. I always remember what Keith Tate said to me, and I'll tell you, he was talking about somebody involved in boxing. And he said, you know what, Jules? He goes, I'll never respect them because they've never been in the trenches. And he wasn't talking about having boxed. He was talking about the trenches of life. He says, I can't respect them because they've never been in the trenches. It was somebody who had some money. And I just thought it was just such a good way of looking at it. And it's like, it doesn't mean to say that someone's not a good guy and that if the back was to the wall, that they couldn't deal with things. But it's almost like that capitalist thing that it was when you're born into money and you get everything given to you, I don't know, that there's just something that I struggle with. And that's why I struggle with all these fighters who are sucking up to him, who are from proper working class backgrounds and the hard luck stories, who have done well. And I just don't understand it. And you can see now his arrogance, because he's had everything he wanted in life, to think he can go over to America and just conquer boxing just because he's done it on a tiny little island in the UK when all the cards were in his favor, because Warren was struggling and the climate was kind of like dirty and it needed the winds of change, didn't it, boxing 10, 15 years ago. And he played around it and he put some good ideas together and the prize fighter, etc. And that's fine, but to think you can just go over to the UK and you can just nudge people out of there. And I talked about this before, but just the whole Fury Joshua thing saga, it was sickening to watch. It was just
What about the Wilder Joshua saga? We had that for 18 months, and then the Fury Joshua, and none of them fights got made. They couldn't make them because of one man, Eddie Hills. They couldn't. He's the common denominator why fuck all's been made, because he wants to skate around it and give us all the hype. It's like somebody saying to you, I'm going to take you to a fucking restaurant for a slap-up meal. They keep saying they're going to take you. Eventually, when they're taking you, they pick you up on that. They said, you know what, I'm pushed for time. Let's just go to Costa for a fucking cheese toasty porky.
Yeah.
I'm like, fucking what? I've got dressed up and like, yeah, but I've got a fucking And that's how it feels, mate. We heard they flew Wilder over, didn't they? Wilder were definitely the next for Joshua or Klitschko. You were going to check the winner on. It never fucking happened. We had all this Shirley Winkle stuff and being an insulting bastard to them all. And do you know what they've all said? Do you know what? Fuck you. Lou DeBella, a lot of them have all turned on him. Al Heyman, DeBella, Gary Shaw won't fucking have him through fucking front door, mate. All of them Americans. Oscar De La Hoya fucking can't stand him. Leonard Ellerby wants to punch fuck out him.
Yeah, he said, and he would do. I think if Leonard Ellerby was
Ellerby's from the fucking street, mate. He's a naughty Leonard Ellerby.
Yeah, you can see that.
So they want to punch they want to punch an hole in him. So he's rubbed everybody up the wrong way. We know about the situation here. Dennis took him outside on boardwalk at IBF convention after he signed Jamie McDonnell. Dennis were in bar. We asked Steve Valiant, and Eddie walked in on his own with no fucking mates. Dennis would fucking on whiskey. Fucking hell. Dennis don't need much.
Dennis has got some fight in him. Yeah.
Dennis has got knackers, mate. I've fucking seen him in action. Dennis said, here, you. What do they call it? Fucking cuckoo, nicking eggs out of cuckoo's a nest or something.
Yeah.
I forgot how he said it. Eddie's gone, you know what Dennis has said? Fucking come out here, you. And he's gone, I must warn you, I'm very good. Dennis has gone, you fucking what? Fucking everybody's jumping at mid-level. He ended up tagging on around them all night round Atlantic City, on boardwalk. Tag along, there were Dennis and all the rest of them, all promoters up there. He fucking tag along round them all. And Dennis says, I felt fucking sorry for him, and he didn't have no fucking mates. And obviously, he'd upset a few people in boxing and that. He wanted to make a bit of noise and that. But how he went about it with Jamie McDonnell were wrong, because Dennis had got a fortune invested in him, and he was just never going to let that go. Do you know what I mean? Never let it drop. But and look what happened in the end. What they did with McDonald, they fucking threw him in at Japan. He was dead at weight, been starving all week, and nearly got the kid fucking wiped out, didn't they? Do you know
That's
what I mean?
the thing, isn't it? And that nobody likes the laughing assassin, do they? It's somebody who's your best mate, and people don't like that. At least with the Warrens and the Arams, you kind of know where you are. They're quite abrasive, actually. They're quite cold in some ways, and they're quite distant, and they play their cards close to the chest. But
what Eddie did is a bully. Look, what he did, how he does it, it's like bullying and smug. The school bully, you know, the kid at the back who comes and flicks your ears. He's one of them types, Eddie. Right? He's an on-top school bully. That's what he is. And he tried it in boxing, and that many people have sucked up to him, but they're fucking not give two fucks about him. But they see him as a cash cow. And when I see people like Steffi Bull, who's from a working class background, putting stuff out like that, I know what Steffi Bull thinks about boxing and how it should be run. And I also know what he thinks about fucking women's boxing as well. But he's had no choice. He's had to make do amend, hasn't he? But I know that will fucking hurt him to fuck to be seen as like a Bellew arse licker to get a foot in door, you know, like a Coldwell. That will hurt Steffi because he has got a bit of pride. But pride goes out the window when we're talking pound notes. Do you know what I mean?
So everybody's got a mortgage. Yeah.
Don't be somebody.
Everyone's got a mortgage.
I don't think. I mean, I've got a mortgage.
I've always been, honestly, I've always been quietly, but my own man. It's how I was brought up. You know, I've made my own luck and I've made my own mistakes, and I've made some big mistakes. But I've never really attached myself to somebody else. I mean, I've you know, I'm going into details, but I could have worked with other trainers and other fighters and just been part of it. I'm talking fighters who have gone very, very far, but it's never been my style. You know, I've always retreated from that situation because maybe I'm uncompromising in some ways, you know, in a quiet sense, but I've always been my own man and done my own thing. And the one consistent feedback I've always had from people, and I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing, I'm quite self-aware. And the one bit of feedback I've always said, like from my ex-wife, from my family, from my current girlfriend, is you won't do something you don't want to do. That's just my nature. If I don't want to do something, I won't do it. You know, like people having a night out at work, or people having a big night out and they say, well, do you fancy this? Do you fancy that? And I just say, no thanks. And I just say, no thanks. And people look at you like that. Whereas most people say, I'd love to, but I've got no money. Well, I'll sub you. Oh, I can't, I'm going out. And I'm just straight, and I'll just say, don't fancy it. No explanation, just don't fancy it. And I'll never be made to do something that I don't want to do. And I will certainly not creep around somebody and suck up to somebody, you know, just because I think there's some money in it for me, or I'm going to gain some advantage over something. I've come on your show, we've got to know each other. I enjoy it. It's simple as that. You know, if you've got 10 views or 10,000, great. I'm glad we get good comments. Sometimes we don't get good comments. It's all fine, but it's just you've got to be your own man, haven't you? Because if you don't have your own identity, and I've said this to you before, it's what I call the man in the mirror moment. You've got to look in the mirror at some point in your life. We all make mistakes. You've owned yours. I've owned mine. I'm still making
my mistakes are fucking porridge every time I make a
You had to fucking pay for your mistakes, haven't you? You've had to pay the hardest price for your mistakes, and some people get away with it. But there's that man in the mirror moment where you have to like what you see. And if you're looking in a mirror and you're not true to yourself, and you don't really have that integrity and that authenticity, and it doesn't do with me, which is why I can count my mates on my thumbs. I don't have fucking hundreds of mates. I just don't. I've got a very, very, very small group of people who I associate with. It's completely by choice, but that's one of the things that I hated about boxing. And maybe that, to some extent, it hurt the fighters I was with, or it hurt myself just by not playing the game as much, really. I wasn't unpopular, but I didn't always. They say to get along, you got to go along.
Yeah.
And I didn't always go along, Russell, and maybe that hurt me. I don't know.
Well, you did all right in boxing, though, I think.
I genuinely don't know, but the good thing is I've got people who I respect in boxing. I can you know, see. I talk to Steve Malett now and again. We'll have a little chat, a little catch up. I haven't seen Joe Gallagher for a few years, but I know if I saw Joe Gallagher, in town, I'd have a coffee with him and we'd be all right. You know, you get that mutual respect. And then, like you just says, the other people, I wouldn't give the time of day, mate.
Fucking hell. Okay.
And they won't give me the time of day either, which is fine. It's fine.
Okay, let's just get a few predictions off you. So you've gone for Kell Brook inside 6. Joshua Usyk, does it happen?
It doesn't happen. If it happens, I think Usyk will beat him on points again.
Dylan White, Fury, does that happen?
That definitely happens. It'll be a good fight, and Fury will get him out of there between 7 and 9.
And do you see it happening and Dylan White and Eddie Hill's falling out?
Sure as tomorrow morning I'll be waking up and, you know, sure as night follows day, that it's nailed on.
Well, if that happens, Dylan White's a very, very shrewd cat because he's never fought for a European title. He's a multimillionaire. He's been protected by Eddie Hearn and he's played the end game and he said, fuck you, Eddie, if he takes the fight, hasn't he?
Dillian White's putting the grafting in the gym. He's taking the punches in the ring. He's made a lot of money for Eddie. Let's not forget that. He's been on pay-per-view shows, headlined some big cards. It's like anything. The relationship works until it no longer works, but you can't seriously be looking at turning down a shot at the heavyweight championship of the world again because Eddie Hearn doesn't like the fact he's not involved. Come on.
And then the undisputed fight after.
Yeah, so Dillian White, come on. I always suspected Dillian White was his own man, and it's looking like he is. And if he doesn't sign tomorrow, we've talked about it, so it'd be the Dave Allen blind loyalty thing, but I have a feeling he's going to sign. And Eddie Hearn is not promoting this fight. He doesn't have a promotional contract with Dillian White. As initially I wasn't sure about that, but it's clear now he doesn't. So he's not entitled to a dime. I mean, Eddie Hearn's next show in the next couple of weeks, is he going to give Dillian White a percentage of that?
No.
Is he fucked? So why should Dillian White give Eddie Hearn a percentage of anything?
Dillian White needs to look at Dave Allen and think, you know what? I need to think of number one.
Dillian White needs to exactly look after himself. I don't know his personal situation, if he's married or has children, but he'll have family. He'll have, hopefully he's got both his parents around. But Dillian White needs to look after his family and himself. That's all he needs to worry about.
Yeah. Okie dokie then. Well, listen, thanks for coming on, Julian. It's been a pleasure. This is a treat for everybody. Have a great weekend, Julian.
You too, and I look forward to the fight, mate. And speak soon.
All right, you take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks very much.
Bye. Oh, that were Julian McGowan from Dewsbury. Starting to look a bit old, aren't I? My head like a skull. Look like I've been on beak. Them days are gone. So that's about it, really. I hope you all enjoyed the show tomorrow night. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let's have a look how long it is. We've done about 80 minutes. So you've had a bit of a treat, haven't you? This is an extra one, by the way, because my whack were done yesterday, but you've had an extra one, so I'm looking after you. So that's about it. I don't know whether to brave it out and take my dog. We might get blown away. So I think I might just stay in. Yeah, I think I'm going to stay in. I'm going to watch that McVicker film in a minute. Remember that? John McVicker escaped, didn't he, from Durham? I'm going to put that on in a minute. I think I've got it over there somewhere. I'm going to put that on. I quite like The Who as well. But I'm going to put that on and just chill out, I think, and wait for the boxing tomorrow. All right, then. So have a good evening. Thank you to everybody that likes and subscribed to the channel and leaves a comment. Loads of people watch the channel and they don't subscribe according to analytics. So come on, show your Uncle Porky some respect. All right. Peace out.